Hello and welcome to the kitchen. So today I'm going to do a video that is going to be 3 different recipes. For 2 of them is stuff to have on hand, and then 1 of them is what we're actually going to be eating this morning. So I'm going to be putting together a homemade Italian seasoning. I know you can buy Italian seasoning in the store, which normally has like oregano, basil, thyme, maybe some rosemary in it, but I'm gonna make a homemade one that has a little bit more than that. And we're gonna pulse it in a mini food processor just for a few seconds to get those oils activated. And then I will have it to use for future recipes. Then we're gonna put together a nice sized kettle of homemade marinara sauce, of which some of it I'm going to use in my recipe this morning. The rest of it I'm gonna store in quart-sized jars, pop it in the freezer, so I always have it for quick meals. Because again, with me going back to work, I'll be cooking dinner at night. Mike will be heating it up in the morning. I'm not even gonna get home. I don't even know when I'm gonna get home at this point. At least 7 o'clock would be my earliest, but if I hit the gym on the way home, it'll probably be 8:30 till I get home at night. So I need stuff to make through the week that's going to be quick. So having basic marinara sauce in the freezer that I could use for pasta dishes or soups, add meat to it for a meat dish, it's always gonna help for those nights that I get home kind of late. And then the third recipe we're gonna have is a pot of homemade minestrone this afternoon, before afternoon. We eat at 11:30 right now because Mike leaves for work before 1 o'clock. So I'm gonna make that with some toasted sourdough bread, and that's gonna be our dinner, I guess you call it. I don't know what we call it. We call it Brinner because it's between breakfast and dinner. Just call it Brinner. So let's get started. So like I said, the first recipe I'm going to make is an Italian seasoning. What I make combined comes out to roughly ½ a cup. So I picked up 6 of these little cups. I found them in a 6-pack at Target for $2.49. Again, this is just about ½ a cup measured out, and they come in handy when you want to make your own seasonings. Got my little mini food processor here, and then sorry, I had to stop the video because I had to sneeze and y'all didn't need to hear that. So the seasonings that I'm going to be putting in my mix are some basil, parsley, oregano, garlic, onion, rosemary, and red pepper flakes. Starting off with 2 tablespoons of dried basil, followed by 2 tablespoons of parsley, 1 tablespoon of dried oregano, 1 tablespoon of granulated garlic, 2 teaspoons of granulated onion, a teaspoon of dried rosemary, and a 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper flakes. And I'm just going to pulse that in the food processor to release those oils, and that is it. And there you go. All right, recipe number 2, the batch of homemade marinara sauce. So what we're gonna need is some olive oil, and that will be to fry up or saute up some onion and some of the minced garlic. We're gonna be using whole peeled tomatoes that we are going to squish ourselves to break them down, some pepper, some salt, some fresh basil, and some of that homemade Italian seasoning mix. Or again, you can just use store-bought Italian seasoning. Starting off with about 3/4 of a cup of olive oil. To that, I'm adding a whole sweet onion that I have chopped up very fine. Once those onions have started to soften, I'm going to add a nice big overflowing teaspoon of minced garlic. While the garlic and onions are sauteing, I'm going to start squishing up my 4 cans of whole tomatoes. I'm just doing them in batches of 2. Again, I'm working with 28-ounce cans, 2 at a time, and I'm just going to smash those up with my hands. So now you're probably thinking, Michelle, why don't you just use crushed tomatoes out of the can? Well, I find that the whole tomatoes tend to be juicier and they keep the seeds. And I like texture to my marinara sauce. So I like it that it's juicier, chunkier, and I like having all of the seeds in there. Once I have all 4 cans of tomatoes crushed up and added to the pot, I'm going to add about 4 teaspoons of that homemade Italian seasoning mix that I just prepared. I chopped up about, I don't know, 20 or 25 of those fresh basil leaves in the food processor, and I'm going to add that to the sauce now as well. Obviously, you're going to need some salt and some pepper. I just add that to whatever taste levels you prefer. Is that not beautiful? Just leave that simmer for a while. Let all those herbs season your sauce. And this is just scrumptious. All right, so now we're ready for recipe number 3, which is going to be the minestrone that we are going to be eating this morning. So I will be using about 1.5 cups of that marinara sauce in the actual soup, but here's everything else we're gonna need. Of course, some salt and pepper. That's just a bowl that I'm going to be putting some beans in, but I have some just like 5 fresh basil leaves, an onion, some carrots, some celery, some vegetable broth, which the vegetable broth and the marinara will be the base for the soup, a can of kidney beans, of course our Italian seasoning, some of these green beans, not all of them, just using a portion, some zucchini, some baby spinach, some small pasta. Again, I won't be using all this. I'll be using maybe half this bag. I am using a gluten-free, but you do want a small pasta. You can use anything that you want. I just chose small shells. And of course, you're gonna top the soup when you're ready to eat it with some good Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. Not the stuff in the green can, please. That's powdered cheese. We don't want that. We want some nice big shreds. So I sauteed up the celery, onions, and carrots in a little bit of olive oil. Now I'm adding that entire carton of vegetable broth. This is the extra large box that measures out to be about 6 cups of broth. Next is our marinara sauce, again about 1.5 cups. When I was sauteing the vegetables, I did put a little bit of salt on them. The can of kidney beans I have rinsed and drained before adding them to the pot. And now about 2 teaspoons of my Italian seasoning. Now it's time for the fresh vegetables. So I chopped up the green beans into like 2-inch pieces and chopped up my zucchini. Just gonna add that to the pot and let that simmer. Now adding the pasta, I got a little heavy-handed with my pasta. I only wanted to add about half of that bag, which would have been about half a pound. And I ended up dumping a little over 3/4 of a pound of pasta in there, which was, yeah, you can have too much pasta in soup because it does suck up all your broth. No, that won't change the sourness. Of course, I've added some salt and pepper. Again, I tasted it, knew it needed a little bit of salt and pepper. Soups always need salt and pepper. So you're just going to taste it and add as it is needed. Let this simmer for a while because your vegetables were put in raw. They do need a chance to cook, as well as the pasta needs a chance to cook as well. Since I did get a little heavy-handed with the pasta, I ended up having to open some more vegetable broth, and I have added that to the kettle.
You want some banana for your sauce?
Now for some added flavor, I'm putting in a 12-ounce can of V8 juice here at the very end. The final additions will be those couple basil leaves that I chopped up nice and fine, and then 2 handfuls of some baby spinach. And you're just going to let this wilt down. I was so ready to eat this. Some good shredded parm, some toasted buttered sourdough that was a little on the crunchy side, and this was wonderful. And of course the pup was eating my pasta and green beans out of the soup. My soup was fabulous. Now, reheating it, you're gonna have to add a little more vegetable broth or tomato juice or something to it because that pasta is gonna keep sucking up the broth. So now back to the marinara. I left this cooked down, the tomatoes cooked down a little more, and I used one of those, I forget what they're called. It's in the dishwasher now, so I can't show you. I think it's called a stir and chop or a chop and stir from Pampered Chef, where I just went in and crushed the tomatoes up a little more. But here's the marinara. I'm gonna let this cool a little more, and then this is going into quart-sized glass jars and into the freezer.